Do. Dave, you should play us a song. Some
Oh,
entertainment.
you're muted.
I was expecting to hear that.
Some didgeridoo or some like wacky saddle. No, what's that
Yeah.
thing called?
Wacky saddle. Are you talking about my hurdy-gurdy?
Hurdy-gurdy.
Is that what that is?
Wacky saddle.
I might have to rename it. It'll be a first and last name on it. When some people name their vehicles, I'll start naming my instruments.
Hurdy-gurdy, wacky saddle. I mean, that's pretty close, right?
Yeah. It's no further away than didgeridoo.
Yeah.
The hurdy-gurdy, yeah, I don't know why, but it reminds me of like something you put on a horse.
Like a wacky
That's
saddle.
funny. Yeah.
Like, what's the thing called that you put on a horse that you sit on?
A saddle.
A saddle. Yeah.
Okay. Is there a girdle on a horse?
Not on a horse that I've seen.
That's something different.
To retain their shapely figure, here's our horse girdle.
Yeah.
Sounds like some form of
I
horse
think that's a
torture.
thing. It is a thing. It is a thing.
A horse girdle. All right.
ASPCA is
Let
gonna come after you
me
now.
ask Google.
I just Google searched it.
Oh, you're right. I wouldn't know. I'm
I'm not
silly
gonna read
lady.
it. I won't read the description, but it is a thing.
How did we get to this? What are you even talking about to begin with?
The instrument in the background is called a hurdy-gurdy.
Oh,
And
Never heard that
I
before.
called it a wacky saddle. And
no,
think
I get that, but I would just didn't know what a
association was
hurdy-gurdy
like-
was.
a girdle I associate with a horse. Although wacky saddle, I don't know, kind of wild, but that's how now you understand the inside of my mind.
I get it, yeah.
I would go the
Yeah.
opposite way. I understand less what's going on in the inside of your mind now, Patrick.
Yeah, now I think you have some history with horses on a farm or something.
I mean, I grew up in the countryside, so
Oh, there you
it's
go.
not country anymore, but
That's the right place to grow up, in my opinion.
oh, you got a cat, and I have a cat like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm considering adding a blur to the background. I removed the items they've pushed off the desk today.
Well, look at all those Game Boy colors. You got like the ultimate Game Boy collection down there.
I do. I actually have like this custom made I don't know what you want to call it, but little controller that allow you to flash the games off of there. It'll even flash the save files as well, which is kind of cool.
Do you make your own games?
Not yet. It's like a short hop away to start modifying them, but I'm like I like to archive, and so I've archived something. I've archived like quite a few games. I think maybe around 60 or 70 games. So my goal was to figure out if the files that were being created were almost exactly the actual like game files, and then reverse engineer them to see if there are any fun comments in some of my favorite games.
That's cool.
Yeah, like I expect there to be something cool in the Conquerors titles, but
We'll get started in like a minute or two. Yeah, my friend Kevin actually has played around with it. I should connect you because he does a lot on them. He actually created I think as a Bitcoin wallet of a Game Boy cartridge that then
that's cool.
It gives you the information when you turn it on. Not that you would want to store that on a Game Boy, but
It's a fun trick. Yeah.
I've seen worse things done. So
I've always wanted to scoop out the insides, put like a Raspberry Pi in there, and then either put in a appropriately sized screen or figure out how to use the screen that's already in there and have a secret computer in my Game Boy.
oh, that's cool.
That'd be cool.
I like your ideas. You should do it. All right, we're gonna get started. Since today is a little bit quicker, we have 30 minutes. And just looking at the time, it's 1 o'clock. We'll wait another minute before we get too far in. I guess we can get started with intros. So 30 minutes security how-to. We're going to be talking about, well, that's contradictory, deploying a SIM in 1 hour. Yeah, I think the whole purpose is not to deploy the SIM in an hour, but to talk about high level, the things you should focus around when deploying a SIM in a quick timeline, and then how you can accomplish and do that, if that's helpful for context. And I'm thankful to be joined myself. I got a new picture this week, by the way, and my wife took it in the background. Apparently there's a thing called the golden hour. I don't know. It's like
Yeah.
evening where you take photos. So I think it turned out all right. My friends tell me I look like the Riddler. Yeah, it's exciting to join today, VP Operations at Blumira. And then we have Emily. Emily, it's great to have you on. You're a security operations analyst. And you want to just give us a quick brief on your background?
Yeah, so security operations analyst. I've got a little bit of a background in some different SIM technologies from my past experience at an MSP. And a little bit about me, I also like playing with honeypots and capturing malware samples and reverse engineering them in my spare time. So I love security, love computers.
Cool, and Game Boy collection.
Yes, and a Game Boy collection, yeah.
What's your favorite game, by the way?
Oh, classic Pokemon, red, blue, or yellow.
Oh, so you own all the titles then?
I own all of the older generation Pokemon titles. I didn't continue through to like DS and stuff like that.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, have you caught them all?
I have not, but I knew one person who it was really their life goal. They were able to capture all of the Pokemon across all of the generations, all of the games. Very proud. So I won't, he's the true Pokemon master. So I'm but a researcher.
Cool. And then we have Dave, who collects instruments. Dave's technical account manager at Blumira.
Yeah, it's instrument collection is a bit of a habit. So yeah, pleased to meet everyone. My name is Dave Bagley. As Patrick mentioned, I am the technical account manager here at Blumira, and just a little history of myself. Worn a lot of hats across the years. So started way back when with disaster recovery, business continuity, kind of moved into storage management, storage security. Worked at Knox, sysadmin roles, network operations roles. So it's just kind of natural evolution to move into the security industry over time.
Cool. It's great to have both you on. We're going to talk about SIM, what things to optimize, how to deploy quickly. And before we do that, Emily, you have some different experiences through deploying SIMs, and just want to talk about some of the traditional challenges that people face as they're trying to be successful with SIM deployment.
Yeah, so across a lot of organizations, sometimes you'll find that the person who's responsible for managing the SIM, standing it up, and later maintaining it, wears many hats. And so they have limited time. Maybe they're on a small IT team. And so I think one of the challenges to getting a SIM up and running is not only becoming familiar with all the details behind the specific SIM you're looking to deploy, but after orienting yourself, then going out and doing it. And I think that, not to tie back to Blumira too quickly, but that's one of the strongest things I think that attracts me to Blumira, is the fact that it is so easy to just get up and running without having to spend the weekend before deployment reading through all the documentation to make sure that I understand what I'm doing is the right thing to be doing, or that I'm following best practices. It's kind of nicer to be able to read a few pages of documentation and have a gist of what you're doing, what needs to be done, and how you'll determine when the goal has been met in terms of standing some up.
What are some of the challenges you've run into once the SIM's operational?
I've seen a couple of different things across a couple of different products. one example is when you're deploying a SIEM on premise, there's a second element beyond just handling the security incidents themselves, sorry, the logs that are coming in, the security logs themselves. There's an infrastructure maintenance part of it that takes a lot of time. I think that distracts away from the purpose of having and running a SIEM itself, which is to keep an eye on those security logs that are coming in and investigating into any security events that are raised that may pose a threat to your organization. I think second biggest thing is once you do get that SIEM up and running, whether it takes less than an hour or if it takes 4 hours, once it's up running and doing stuff, and you're starting to get alerts in, you may find that you're getting too many alerts in. And so that was the issue I found with another product that created a lot of false positives. And I spent a lot of my time looking at alerts that weren't a concern for my organization. And that detracted me from being able to get other tasks that were pending done. Again, small team, not a lot of resources. So
yeah, I think it's common. I mean, I've seen quite a bit of this aspect of like, yeah, getting some logs in, but then it's like there's so much more to do. And I did post a survey on what has been your experience with SIEM. So please complete. Looks like we have quite a few people completing right now. But I think behind this, right, is like in order to be successful with the traditional SIEM model, and why so many SIEM deployments fail is the fact that there's just a lot of tasks to be done. And I think you're even inserting some things where it's like, well, yeah, when you then layer in infrastructure on top of that, for instance, or variable cost and things of that nature, it makes it even more difficult.
yeah.
But I'm curious, like on this spectrum of things to be done, like normally someone has to get ingestion and parsing done and threat intelligence correlated and implement detection rules and alerting. Are there any specific areas that you've seen people stumble or come across that becomes more challenging and takes more time as you start doing the implementation portion of it?
Yeah, I think the biggest barrier is, especially if you have multiple people on one team, logging into the SIEM and checking it out, is getting alert fatigue and not really using the SIEM for what it was intended because you're too busy tuning out what doesn't matter. I think that's the biggest thing. Sometimes, you have a problem integrating, one of your technology solutions into the product itself, and that's a separate issue. And that might be with the SIEM product, or it might be with the API for whatever product you're trying to integrate. But that aside, I think the biggest issue is once the SIEM's actually up and running and your team's trying to use it in order to keep your network safe, having, 30 plus alerts in one day or a reoccurring alert on something that is good, that will distract you and it'll make you not jump on that one alert that is ringing a bell that should be investigated, so to speak.
Yeah, that's completely true. I mean, it ends up creating a lot of time to be worked on, or time involved in actually responding and figuring what if anything is of value. I think also that ends up being a problem where it's like, well, you kind of just tune out from it because there's so much noise, and that's why people essentially stop doing anything with it. The poll results, just high level, is like nobody said positive experience. One percentage said neutral, 1 negative, 1, and then 4 have no experience. And so I think the no experience as well is pretty common, where people just haven't implemented or deployed SIEM technology before. And we're going to hop into like some of the things to consider, with Dave, because Dave does a lot of deployments, and even prior to Blumira, I think both you guys have a lot of experience in using and deploying SIEM. And I think the tips we're talking about here, like these are irregardless of whether it's Blumira or another product. Like there's certain things you have to do inherent on the infrastructure side to even get to success. And so I think these are some of the things to consider when you're making decisions. So Dave, curious to get your thoughts. Like first off, like which logs should I collect and why, right? And how do I prioritize that?
Yeah, prioritization is really, it really depends on the organization. So if you're speaking, from the perspective of a system administrator that's maintaining Active Directory, that's probably number one on your list right there. Hit your DCs, make sure that their log sources are, enabled, that they're streaming over to your SIEM, and that there's no issues there in the logging. Kind of work your way up from the stack from there. Once AD is covered, hit your firewalls, make sure that our syslog is configured properly, and that is, kind of the next core piece that you should hit. And any of the cloud applications, if you take a look at the integrations that we have available on bluemirror.com, those are generally, they're day-to-day becoming more high-value targets for bad actors. So ensuring that you're getting those log sources prioritized and back over to us, or whichever SIEM you might be using. Those are probably the three core items that I would be touching on immediately when implementing a SIEM. And we do
I think the other things I'm thinking about are just like Active Directory firewall. Sorry, I spaced. What was the third one you mentioned?
any of your cloud applications.
Yeah, I mean cloud infrastructure, and then productivity as well, right? Like Office 365, G Suite.
Correct.
And then I think there's some aspect of, hey, can I get complementary data from other security products like an EDR or an Umbrella, or a Duo, right? Other types of products that you can get visibility into threat.
Exactly. And one of the things that we do offer here at Blue Mirror is a pre-built GPO policy that you can easily, load into your environment that kind of gives you better verbosity in your logs. So by default, some of the Windows event IDs may not actually have any auditing trail to them. So part of our log Mira policy is to enable, capturing the success and failures of those services or those interactions to ensure that you have better visibility, more verbosity to that log.
Hey, and I think like just to highlight, that's something free to anyone, and you need to do that with any SIEM when you do log collection, is implement some of those rules on the Windows host so you can detect certain types of techniques and tactics, which is great. And then I think going beyond that, and this ties into visibility as well as other things that you should do related to Windows that people can take advantage of to detect things as well. Is that right?
Yeah, I always, every customer I come across, I'm sure there's anyone listening out there that I've already had contact with. I heavily beat the drum for Sysmon. It's a great utility that's available from the sysinternals package. You can pull it in just along, on its own. Very simple install, very easy to deploy across your network or your environment. Sysmon has essentially it's a driver and a service piece that work together, produces additional 25-ish event IDs, gives you visibility into process creation, process teardown, DNS client requests, and a whole host of additional information. Great utility for any sort of digital forensics or incident response work. Highly suggested if you are in a Windows environment to absolutely deploy Sysmon across that entire environment.
Hey, I just want to show too the GPO template, like we have that on GitHub. If you, for instance, anybody wants it, whether they're using our product or others, and you can kind of go through and look at the settings if you want to just change them yourself. I think the reality is like most people don't want to do 100 different rule audit, and the GPO template allows you to do that on its own, and you don't have to be a Blue Mirror customer to get that. And then I was trying to think if Sysmon was on here, but I think Sysmon's on like a blog post, right? We also have like detection tests, which you should do, but I think if you type in like Blue Mirror Sysmon in Google, how to enable Sysmon's a good guide as far as how to get this enabled to get that implemented effectively, right, Dave?
Correct. And I think there's some additional information on that post as well to give you a little bit of background on the additional event IDs that you'll be able to gain access to, and and what they're generally used for.
Cool. Yeah, and I mean, the whole thing here is like the reality is detection is not about just collecting logs, or SIEM isn't, right? It's really about getting visibility into real threats, and then being able to help take action around them, right?
Absolutely.
Is really key.
Yeah.
So, and then I think like if you look at this, I think the challenge has been traditionally that like we have ingestion and parsing and threat intelligence and detection rules, and I think that's where it's like having to do all this stuff yourself either requires a ton of expertise and time, and so people end up failing typically in these areas, is what we consistently hear from organizations, which is why we've done it a bit differently, where we really automate that front end. So we can surface and detect threats. So yeah, curious if anything points out here as well, as far as like any of the key values and approach that we're taking, or things to consider for people out there.
From my perspective, success is a bit of a moving target. So really what it boils down to is getting into an operational status, getting into a point that it's maintained or has maintainability. For many traditional SIMs, that can turn into frankly a ton of work. It's you're chasing down log types that may have changed, updating parsing rules, and then having to rewrite your threat detection against the new parsing rules. So that's one of the things that I think we shine at as a company. And the piece that is SIEM within our Blue Mirror product, it's the fact that a lot of this stuff's just taken care of for customers. So that's one is time savings, gets them to an operational status much quicker, therefore getting them to a successful state much quicker. But we augment all that with the offering of playbooks on how to respond to detected threats. And that's kind of end to end. You start with your log ingestion. Success really means getting to that point where you have threats surfaced. The threats are of high fidelity. It's not just noise, like some of the other traditional SIM players that just pepper you with alerts. And
yeah, I think it's interesting you say that, because like I there is another aspect where a lot of people are like, hey, you guys don't send us that much alerts, right? Is a common misconception at Blue Mirror. And what I often say is they're like, well, why am I not seeing like this event, right, surfaced? And it's kind of interesting because like, oh, well, why do you want to see that, or why do you think you can? And the logic there is usually pretty often pretty similar, which is like, well, that could be something bad, right? And what's really interesting there is like, what we found is then we go and the customer interacts with Blue Mirror, our security analyst team, right? And normally it's more or less like, why would you want to do that? You learn, and really what they want is they want to report on a weekly basis so they can go see like the highest volume of a certain event or thing that might then show that something's wrong, or they need to do it for audit or other reasons, right? But it's like there's actually a better avenue to get what they're wanting through reporting than actual detection rule. Because if you implement a detection rule, they'd have to do it like go check it 20 times a day, and then it just becomes noise again.
Right.
And so I think the common theme, what I found in what we're doing, is a lot of looking for persistence. Depending on the type of threat, of course, persistence isn't required in a lot of the logic that we've built, and helping organizations there. So, and then certainly, getting something quick and fast. It's like, yeah, the reality is organizations a lot of times, especially if you're just IT and you're covering for security and that's part of your role, is you don't have much time to get up and running operational. And so we help with that as far as being able to deploy quickly and support the customer from an implementation perspective, and even so do it in a way that most customers deploy and try the product before they ever spend any money or buy. And then Emily and Dave, like this kind of outlines some of the areas to think about from a focus perspective, just in generally of the types of targets you want to be collecting logs for, and then detecting threats from the different information. And I think exciting, like next week, we have some new news that we'll be announcing. I can't say anything about it, but expanding coverage here. A lot goes into making sure that we have the right detection capabilities in place across this different technology stack. So any recommendations or observations from your perspective on these targets that we discussed a little bit earlier?
I guess I'd just be tooting our own horn here. Just the fact that, the high valued targets that you should be pulling logs from, we have pre-built tight integrations with already. So as you can see, just looking at this one slide, throughout the stack from your endpoints to your firewalls to your cloud infrastructure, your Windows hosts, these are areas that we can, have tight integrations with, pull log sources from. And, that's, again, one of the things that I believe differentiates Blue Mirror from some of our competitors is the fact that, those integrations are taken care of for you. If you're deploying a SIEM, that's usually one of the biggest, heaviest lifts that you're going to run into, is making sure that you're integrated with the rest of your environment, that the parsing is taken care of. And as you've already mentioned, we've got back-end security analysts, we've got security operations teams that take care of this and own that on the customer's behalf.
Simplify it, right? Don't be spending time. I think as Emily mentioned, on the front end of getting everything in and trying to figure out what to do with it. Right?
Yeah, and I would agree with that. To circle back around to what Dave mentioned in terms of one of the reasons why our SIEM is so nice and easy to use is when you do get an alert from one of these services in Blue Mirror, it is really nice to not just have this disjointed alert, kind of wonder, well, what do I do next? It's really nice to at least have a suggestion and playbook in the upper right-hand corner that you could look to, or come to a consensus on the team of, okay, well, what are generally the next steps here? Why are we concerned about this? It's a big help, because sometimes that step alone, after you get the alert, takes time. It takes time to figure out, well, what is this log telling me? And what does it mean for my environment? So to take that heavy lifting out is nice. And then further, when you have any sort of breaking security news about any of those products, or just about a certain kind of attacking behavior in general, our incident detection engineers are on it. It's really fun to see them take in a news story and then go, well, how can we improve our detections? Are we already looking for this behavior? How can this incident be applied to how our SIEM is operating? A lot of fun.
Yeah, that's great. And then on the deployment side, right? You just want to talk through really what's realistic to expect, Dave, as far as what's required and how to get to value really quick.
Yeah. So essentially, you're starting off with a sensor. We do use Ubuntu as the base sensor image. From there, it's extremely easy through our interface to just begin to add the different integrations. We refer to them as modules. So within our UI, it's just a simple click to add a module, such as a honeypot. So there's one thing that traditionally has taken some time to set up and configure. Make sure that you're forwarding the logs specific to your honeypot environment. Where for us, it's 2 clicks, I believe. Add a module, select the honeypot, click install, and you're done. And that's immediate value for a customer right there. Easy, simple way to find any sort of lateral movement detections. So once you do have that sensor installed, you add your integrations in, you add your log sources in. At that point, our analyst team, our operations team will enable the detection rules for your organization, and you're essentially done at that point. If there are issues in your environment, we generally find them pretty quick upon that initial deployment. And I would say more times than not, within a week, we see security posture just improved immediately at customers' environments. And it's simply because we have these playbooks available to customers. They know how to react, and the quick deployment of our integrations.
Yeah, and just to show some of the things you mentioned, right, is like, you click on once the sensor's up and running, click honeypot, click install, grab logs from different areas like your Carbon Black or your Office 365 or Azure. And then you can send syslog to it as well. So for like firewalls. And I think that's the joy, is it's like, that's pretty much the work that goes into actually getting operational. And then it's the matter of surfacing threats. Dave, what are some of the more common threats you've seen surface with customers, right? And within real environments, anything in particular that comes up?
I guess just something that popped in that was fairly recent would probably be the hafnium exchange scares. I think we had web shell detections, very specific web shell detections within 24 hours of collecting that log data. Again, that was sysmon right there. The verbosity that's in those logs, it was pretty simple to identify those threats. We had rules written, deployed out to customers, and shortly after those exchange exploits were released, we started seeing crypto miners at some customer sites. We started seeing web shells dropped, and these are things that we were immediately detecting and alerting upon. So certainly gave our customers a leg up, when fighting against these bad actors. Yeah,
to show a few different examples, I always like to show a few different things like password spraying, for instance. So this is on a firewall, right? And we see password spraying attempts happen. The data down below, so this is stacked evidence, so you're not getting over alerted. And then essentially being able to block the IP address using a next-gen firewall like a Cisco or a Palo Alto or a Checkpoint or Fortinet. And essentially when I do that, right, then I put a rule in the block list of that firewall, and we can actually even see, the block list itself, IP address here, and then the configuration above. So I could actually change this to be automated from a response perspective. So really straightforward, simple, easy to do, and a good prevention measure from an automation standpoint that then reduces the workload on the customer. So, I mean, that pretty much shows, from a timing perspective, being able to get to quick time of value, not having to deal with the fact of like, well, what rules should I enable? How do I parse logs? How do I actually get instance operational? And even, I think the other thing to note is like, yeah, in a lot of cases, a SIEM will go under resourced. And I mean, one of the great things of Cloud SIEM is the fact that like, well, you have access to unlimited compute and resources, so that things are so much faster, quicker from a processing standpoint. And it's kind of funny, but I was on a call the other day, and they were going to show me their elk stack, right? And they're like, "Oh man, it's not working again. I gotta go figure out the underlying infrastructure, like hit resource limitations or constraints." And it's just like, oh yeah, that's just like, Emily, I think what you talked about earlier, it's like one more problem to go figure out to solve that prevents you from being successful with the whole purpose of the project and the product itself.
It's actually a good point to make about Blumira as well. Some of the other SIEM providers out there do have this premise of offloading older logs into cold storage. I've heard anecdotal stories from customers saying that, hey, our previous SIEM provider, it took them 24 hours to produce us a report because they had to pull that out of cold storage. Or in the premise of the elk stack, older logs could have their indices closed, and you have to go back in there and know, hey, if I want to search for this older data, I have to reopen this index, wait for that data to become available, and then I can create my report. Our data is available on the fly always. By default, we offer customers 365 days of log storage, and that is, compared to the other SIEM providers out there, you can essentially consider that hot storage, always, those logs are always available. Your reportabilities are always, right there for you.
That's cool. Hey, last call to action. Just want to mention we have the capability to try our product for free. I always encourage people to try and deploy it. I've seen people get, almost everything completed in 30 minutes. And then there's another set of folks that take a little bit longer. I think the joy is we do have resources like myself, Dave, sales engineers that can help ensure a successful deployment. And then also Emily and the security analyst team to help, a lot of times, hey, what does this mean? Do I really need to look at this? Does this need to be adjusted? Conversations on what should be reporting versus detections. So thanks everybody for joining. If you're interested in talking more, throw up a quick survey. Just say yes or no. That should be fine. And then, any last thoughts, Emily and Dave, before we hop off?
Yeah, try us out. I'm obviously biased. I love this company. We've got one of the best teams I've ever worked with, and this is talking across 20 plus years in the IT industry. So we've got a lot of great minds here, and we're working on behalf of customers daily. So I'd say give us a trial. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, I agree with that. Just give us a try. I think the biggest thing before, especially when starting a new SIEM or interacting with the new technology, it's like, oh, I got to learn all this new stuff. And I'm already busy, but I am very happy to be able to say that you can really get this, at least a trial, up and running 30 to 60 minutes. And I think that's amazing. So if you have an extra 30 to 60 minutes in your day and you're curious about Blumera, give it a go. It's really easy.
Cool. Well, thanks for the time today, everybody. Appreciate it, and look forward to continuing to help organizations in operationalizing security. So thanks so much. Later.